Hi, everyone, and welcome to That UFO Podcast. Off the record, I'm joined by a returning and brand new guest for this discussion. First off, joining me again is host of Others from Another Mother, Dan Cleary. Dan, welcome back.
Hello, gentlemen. Thanks, Andy.
Good to have you back on with us, mate. And for the first time, delighted to say I have the host of Night Shift, who on YouTube and creator of Doomer Fridays. Many of you have enjoyed those in the last couple of weeks on the feed and from the feed that you've followed over from. So thanks for joining. Clint Weldon. Clint, welcome, mate.
Thanks for having me, Andy. You didn't tell me Dan was going to be on, or I wouldn't come. It was just
That's the only way to get
you
here.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I really wanted Clint on. Clint wasn't responding to my messages, and I was like, Dan, do you want to join me? And can you get Clint on the podcast?
That's right.
Only because
useful
Xander
idiot.
and Pavel weren't available. So yeah. But yeah, the next best
You got
thing,
the
guys.
dumb Americans.
Basically, yeah. I'm not agreeing with you. It's good to have you both on. Really casual conversation here because I do a lot of news updates, do a lot of interviews. Dan, you've joined me for one of those, and there's a few topics I'd love to speak about, and it's great to have some back and forward on. And I have genuinely really enjoyed you guys on a Friday and the Doomer Friday shows, which you've let me be a part of a couple of times now. And there's a hell of a lot going on, and very intrigued to get your thoughts. And we're going to kick off, gents, with Jeremy Corbell right now seems to be at the forefront again of the disclosure push in the United States, if not worldwide, for good or for bad. Have you both seen Sleeping Dog at this point?
Yes.
Yes. I'll come to you, Clint, first, since your first time on the podcast. What's your take on Sleeping Dog, Jeremy Corbell's documentary that came out on May 12th?
I love it. It really humanizes Jeremy in a way that I think you just can't do otherwise. He comes on very strong, and he's also, he's very intense. And I didn't know a lot of the history behind how he got to where he was. And so for me, just learning all of that, and I just learning about the guy and what brought him to this moment in his life, I found that fascinating. I think it's really interesting when someone decides, like, I'm going all in on this one thing, no matter what. And then they do. And even when they have no idea how to do it, he's just figuring it out as he goes. Like, that was just very inspiring. I think everybody should watch it. If you're interested in journalism and guerrilla journalism, it's an awesome documentary.
Yeah, good shout. Dan, you're obviously closer with Jeremy than myself. I speak to Jeremy via text. That's not a secret.
He's been on your show multiple times too. Yeah, he's great on
Yeah,
the show.
he's
Yeah.
coming on in a few weeks. What's your take on Sleeping Dog? You saw it some time ago.
Yeah, I did. I did. I saw it a few months ago, and I kind of agree with Clint. I think if people are looking for a full-on UFO documentary with breaking news and all kinds of stuff, it's not really that. But I think it is a very, very powerful movie about journalism and the responsibilities and the dangers of journalists, and more the responsibilities of protecting your sources, and in Jeremy's case, whistleblowers and folks like that, and dealing with sensitive information, and the delicate and scary balance of how do you bring stuff forward that, first of all, could maybe get you put in jail, and then finding out, like, what is real, what is, are you being fed bullshit, is this real stuff? I mean, it's a good deep dive, but like Clint said, it was cool seeing how Jeremy got to where he is now. And for people that have issues with him, and there's plenty, if you watch this, you do kind of get a little bit of an understanding about who he is and how he was as a kid, and the struggles that he's had with, like, ADHD and what's it when you see stuff
Dyslexia.
backwards? Yeah, dyslexia.
Dyslexia, yeah.
But he's also had the same excitement that he has now since he was a kid. But there also is some great UFO stuff in there. Some really, really great little Easter eggs and things that make more sense now that we're seeing, something like the Rubik's Cube. He says Rubik's Cube in the film, which now has become a thing. But I think it's great. I think it's worth watching as a study on him, and just it's an important movie in the UFO topic, I think.
Yeah, I've not shared my proper thoughts on it. Really enjoyed the first hour is surprising, different to what I thought it was going to be because
Mhm.
Jeremy Corbell didn't direct this himself. It was Michael Lazowski. I had Michael on the news update last week, and he spoke about it in kind of a 20-minute preview. He handed over 20 years of footage to Michael and said, "Here's what you can use to. Here's my life. Here's what's got me to this point in ufology." And you see a lot of footage of John Lear, his eating habits, which has become a bit of a thing. Um, John Lear's I think it's fair to say some kind of descent into a little bit of madness. Some of his unique thoughts on the UFO topic. We hear from Edgar Mitchell, Bob Lazar, George Knapp, and we see what's made Jeremy Corbell, like you've both said, the man he is, especially in terms of ufology, from a journalism point of view, and like you said, Clint, guerrilla journalism. And that's something I'm going to speak about pretty soon, I think, when we talk about a big interview Jeremy's just done. We then get that last half hour where it sort of jumps to the last couple of years, and Jeremy's, whether you like him or not, he is a divisive guy. He is Marmite for so many people. Jeremy himself always says praise and blame, it's all the same. He doesn't particularly seem to care. You find how involved he has been with Grush, with Borland, with Matthew Brown, bringing people forward, people he is going to bring forward that will be in the wings right now, that we will be talking about in months and years to come, that we don't even know their names yet, that will be involved in this. So he has had a huge hand in whatever disclosure this is and what this process is. And you have to give him some kind of credit for that. Moving on to his interview, though, what I will say, sorry, I saw him get a lot of praise for the documentary, even from a lot of folks who started their reviews by saying, "I don't like Corbell. I'm not a
Mhm.
fan of Jeremy Corbell." But this was a really eye-opening documentary, an interesting look at the man, the human side of Jeremy Corbell. It really did humanize him. But I wonder what's changed for some people off the back of the interview with Chris Ramsay on Area 52. So for those who may not have seen it, and Clint, you haven't seen it yet, have you? Dan, you have.
Mhm.
Area 52 with Chris Ramsay. It just got released in the last 48 hours. It was recorded back in March 24th, so around 6 weeks ago, before the documentary came out. Um, the comments were really interesting because that was the first thing I noticed. I planned on watching it, but if you go on X or go on YouTube, the comments are not positive. And there's actually a mix of people worried about Jeremy Corbell based on his behavior, how he comes across on the documentary. Um, yeah, it's a bit of an awkward watch. And Dan, I'll come to you first, knowing Jeremy and you've watched it. What's your take on the appearance with Chris?
Um, yeah, it's tough, but I'll be completely honest. It was I've never seen an interview with him like that before. Um, and right off the bat, it was like he was just kind of in a different headspace. But I also this was recorded in March, I believe.
Yeah, March
Um,
24th. Yep.
yeah, and I do know that it's been a very, very stressful and actually kind of a scary time for him recently. And I have to think that at that time, right now maybe a few days away from getting all kinds of those 46 videos that were talked about, that he's been trying to get done for a couple years. And I would assume, I don't know this for sure, but I assume when that was filmed, he was deep in that world, trying to work on getting that stuff um, put out publicly. And with that comes a lot of pushback and threats and all kinds of stuff. So when I was watching that, it was hard because I'm seeing my friend kind of really going through a tough time. And I don't think that's not what he's usually like. He seemed a little bit more distant. He seemed a little bit um, more short. But also, we have to remember, like, everyone has weird days. We have off days, and sometimes that happens in front of thousands and thousands of people. Um, so it was interesting, but also I think there's some really good. They have some really good conversations in there, some really good information as well. But I see a bunch of comments about him being on drugs or being drunk, and that's just not the case. I can say that pretty safely. But yeah, it was an odd one.
It's also important that people understand, for most people who are watching this space from a distance, and particularly the audiences on YouTube, it's a huge fascination, a huge interest, but it's not their life, right? Like you can turn it off, you can go back to a regular life, you can dip in, dip out, you can buy a few UFO books once in a while, you can watch a documentary and then go do something else. This is his world. This is like Jeremy is in it up to his eyeballs, like 24/7. He has a life, but he also does this on top of that. So then you have all of the stress of trying to be this guy who's walking around with all of this information on your mind and carrying this huge load. I can't even imagine. That's one of the things the documentary really helped me understand, is just how he goes from being this young, basically kid who wants to just be an artist, to being this guy who is now kind of the tip of the spear. Show me somebody else who has produced more actual results than Corbell and Knapp. I'll wait. You can't. These guys in the last couple of years, I mean, God, they're kicking ass. And so God bless him. And the fact that he's out there doing it at all, given the amount of nonsense that people have to put up with in this space, is astonishing. So I think I'm with you, Dan. Everybody's entitled to a bad day, and I would never want to judge somebody based on their, one bad day that they have out of a month. It's a lot. It's a lot to carry around for this guy. It's a big deal.
He seems totally on the edge. Throughout the interview, his answers can be wildly off kilter. Fair play to Chris Ramsay, because that would have been a difficult one for anyone to control. Jeremy himself, during the interview, begins to acknowledge, have I answered your question? Did I go off on a tangent? He does interrupt Chris a lot. And quite often when Chris tries to agree with something or say, oh, so this is like this, more often than not, Jeremy jumps in and goes, no, almost as if you've not understood what I've said, but Chris has understood it. And again, Jeremy later on begins to acknowledge that. So I think if folks are going to watch it, it is 2 hours, 46 minutes. I would encourage you to watch the full thing to get the full impact, the effect, because there is a lot of quality conversation in there as well. Clint, to your point, and also what you said, Dan, it looks like he is really in the thick of this now. And something that gets put to people like Jeremy, like Elizondo, like name any other UFO personality really in the spotlight and in the media, is they don't give us much, but then they seem to walk about freely, hassle-free, carefree. We've got scientists going missing, but these guys can come out and say what they want. This looks like a guy who's really worried about something, who looks like he is at risk, like he talks about in the documentary. I think it's been out, very slight spoiler, folks. Right towards the end, we see a scene where Jeremy goes to the desert where he's buried a box which has a flash drive in it. He takes the flash drive out, puts it in a laptop, and he's filmed over his shoulder, and he shows you some of those videos, 8 clips from the alleged 46 we're going to get on that next drop, hopefully, from War Gov. And he's holding this material. And I imagine within that, and I do hope that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what he has. And looking at the files on the screen grabs when you're watching a documentary, there's some really interesting names of things there. It looks like he's got stuff around bodies, pilots, different craft. He's got various different organizations and government departments, footage of varying quality. So maybe it is just in that time, at that place, he had this ready to come out. Those videos that we're going to get, he was gearing up for release 01 from war.gov. He was literally shitting himself for repercussions that could happen. And I suppose that was something people said about Matt Brown when he first came forward, how scared he sounded, the tremble in his voice, the kind of authenticity.
Good catch.
This was Corbell looking a lot different to normal. Is that fair, Dan?
I think that's a good point. I think it's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that, the connection to kind of Matt, but kind of a similar thing where you kind of realize you're really you're close to touching the electric fence. You know, you're reaching towards it. You're right near it, and it is a dangerous spot to be in. That's a good comparison.
During it, he does. I think it's a listener question towards the end, and Chris Ramsay asks him really fairly around. I think the question's something like, "What's the best evidence you have seen, or smoking gun evidence you have seen that you can't talk about?" Corbell's answer goes wildly off kilter on this one, but Chris Ramsay is really, really good at sticking to no. Like, I'm looking for you to tell me, because Corbell starts to say, me and George have given you 13 videos, we've given you this, and Chris is like, no, undeniable, crystal clear footage. We're looking at HD, 4K, not FLIR, not infrared. Again, Jeremy tries to, and I'm trying to remember the interview, and Clint, for yourself, he tries to go back round to say, infrared's just a different camera type, and FLIR, and these are showing things, and it is showing data, and Chris is very much like, no, that's not good enough. We're looking for 5 observable, undeniable, tic-tac triangle, something incredible happening, stuff we keep hearing about. That's what we need. And Corbell's like, well, yeah, I have seen it, but I don't. He's very quick to say, I don't have it on my phone, I don't have it on my laptop, but it doesn't mean it's not out there. If this next drop of videos comes, and we'll get to talking about that in a minute, and we get similar to what we've had already, Clint, I'll give this to you, and it is blurs and dots, and you've seen Sleeping Dog, you've seen the clips at the end of that. Some of it looks interesting. If it's 46 videos like that, what does that do?
If it's 46 more videos that are sort of inconclusive but look interesting, I don't think it really changes anything. It makes the conversation a little more difficult, but at the end of the day, there is an element of faith to this. Like, you do have to take it on some kind of faith that this motherlode of information exists. I believe it does. And I believe that because I've talked to enough people who understand how massive the bureaucracy has to be to manage a project of this size. Like, there's just no way. There's no way there aren't hundreds of terabytes of data. I'm talking about everything up to, high resolution footage from inside of a craft walking around with shit turned on. I mean, that has to exist. If this program is real, and I believe it is, then all of that is real. So, with a guy in Jeremy's position has a certain amount of information that's in his head at any given moment. And I understand how you have to be really cagey about what you know and what you don't, because just by answering a question a certain way, you reveal a lot about what you know. Look at the Rubik's Cube thing with Borland, right? Like that whole exchange was exactly that. It was like, I'm going to answer a question. I'm going to ask a question in a way that
Do you want to touch on that, Clint, for what that was for people who might not have seen it?
Well, I only saw it one time, and it was and I only saw the clip, so I haven't seen the whole thing in context. But Dan, did you watch the whole thing? Maybe
I don't think the whole thing's out yet. I imagine it'll be. I think it looks like it's going to be a weaponized episode. I assume, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, he's got a clip that's posted right now, and it looks like a onstage presentation with Jeremy and Dylan Borland, and they're talking about something. What Dylan knows and what he can talk about, more or less. And the question comes to him, is he aware of a kind of a smoking gun kind of a thing, like what Ramsay was trying to get out of Corbell. And Corbell says, well, all I can say is, I've been told that there is a program named Rubik's Cube.
Well, he said that, just to correct you, sorry, but he said that.
Yeah, please.
ODNI told Jeremy for some fucking reason that Dylan testified to the ICIG to the knowledge of a program called Rubik's Cube. So it wasn't just Jeremy didn't just hear about it. Like, ODNI reached out to Jeremy to tell him about a classified conversation they had with Dylan, which seems wildly dangerous and illegal.
And when you watch that exchange, the Dylan's body language is everything, because he just has a complete, almost I don't want to say nervous breakdown, but you could see in his body, he's like, holy shit. You can tell the whole temperature of the room changes. And then he comes out and he says, well, look, if ask for whistleblower protection, and when that's granted, I can answer your question. But right now I can't confirm or deny. And it's kind of like implied what the answer is. But it was just a very interesting exchange. And going back to your original question about Chris Ramsay and Corbell, all I wanted to say on that was, I get it. You know, it's hard to be in that position. I can't imagine how stressful it must be, and you know, how difficult it's got to be to tiptoe around you know, questions in a way that answers them somehow, but still keeps you out of trouble. There are real risks here. There are real stakes. People are disappearing, and it is a real danger to have this information. So, as far as if a bunch of new videos drop tomorrow, and would it move the needle, or on Friday? Look at how much progress there's been since 2017. Look how far we've come. I mean, it's unimaginable to someone.
Yeah.
If you went back in time 20 years ago and you were like, this is what's happening in 2026, and you tried to explain it to them, they'd think you were out of your mind.
Well, when we were kids, when we were like in the 80s and 90s, like being into UFOs, like trying to imagine where we're at now seemed like it was 1,000 years away.
Bob Lazar was a distant whisper, like a rumor about a guy. You hear about that guy who worked at Area 51? What? Who? There's a video. There's like a videotape. You had to like get the tape from somebody. Someone had to like tape it off of like a George Knapp news segment, and then have like a VHS copy they would like pass around. And, you know, there's no way to get information back then. And cut to today, we're talking about the second giant release of UFO files mandated by the sitting president of the United States from the DOD. What was the stat on the Department of War website?
As of today, it's hit 1 billion views.
That's unbelievable.
This is the moment huge. Where UFOs are going completely mainstream. Like, I'll stick to that. I think that we have achieved that.
Do you think, and we're going to come to the releases in just a minute, do you think there's perhaps, and I'm going to put this to Jeremy, a little bit of a detachment for Jeremy and perhaps George? But I know George is doing a lot less these days. You know, George is older than Jeremy and has done a ton of interviews and works incredibly hard, so he's not always as available. There's a little bit of a detachment, though, where you've got Chris Ramsay saying what a lot of us are thinking around when are we going to get good stuff? And Jeremy's like, we've given you good stuff. But then there's another level where Jeremy's been privy to really, really good stuff. So for him, he's seen what we want to see.
Yes.
So he's released this other stuff, and then he's got the context in the background of, yeah, but this is really good. He's seen, for example, imagine the gimbal video. Imagine he's seen the actual HD version. So he's going, yeah, you've got the good stuff. Well, we don't have the good stuff. We don't have the convincing stuff. We've got stuff that's still in a lot of different ways. You can hear testimony and stories around it, but he's privy to worldview changing footage that we aren't. So it's easier for Jeremy to be like, yeah, you've got good stuff. You have to understand why this is all good. And it's like, yeah, but we still need that extra step. We still need that something more. Yep. That even debunkers and skeptics go, you know what? Hands up, that there's no debunking that.
Yep. I think, yeah, imagine that. First of all, I was thinking about this earlier, a couple of days ago. To be someone like Jeremy or George, or there's probably a handful of people who are aware of what is available, and the frustration of Jeremy, particularly, where if he doesn't check responses on Twitter really, but all day, every day, seeing the words grainy videos must be so frustrating, knowing what's available, but also he's tried to explain 1,000 times like what those videos actually show. And if you knew what you're looking at, what those censor platforms, what they are actually reading tells you a ton, but that's just not catching on to society. It's not catching on to the public as to like, we still see black and white grainy videos, but really there's a ton of information, but it must be so frustrating to know. Like he's referenced a couple of times now, a crystal clear video of 2 saucers circling like a Russian sub. And he's like, there is things like that are truly undeniable. And I assure you folks, if he can get it out, it will be out. That is the plan. That's the hope. So it just must be really, really exhausting and tiring to hear that all day, every day. But
The issue is,
it's
though,
valid.
let me tell you, Clint, come in on this, though, that it's 2026. People read the headlines, not the article.
Yep.
So if the headline's the video, people will not go into, yes, but here's what the sensor data means. And
True.
if you watch Clint's 3-hour breakdown where he has the captain of the fucking Nimitz on his show with him telling you what it all means, people don't do that. They want the 60-second TikTok that shows you the video, shows you what it is, and they'll read the
share it.
comments of people going, more bloody bullshit. And that's it. That's what people will go for. So you need something that is literally going to capture the TikTok generation's mind, where in 60 seconds, can you show me something that is undeniable, not something you have to then explain to me on top of it?
Did you guys hear there was a clip with Elizondo just the other day that dropped where he kind of talks about that. Did you see this?
Mm-mm.
Where they go,
What was on?
I'd have to track down the show, but I just caught the clip, and it was Lue on a podcast. He's doing a standard Lue's Clues kind of interview, but he says that he gets the question more or less again that it's like, if we could know what you know, how would we conduct ourselves? Like we, the general audience or the population at large. And Lue gets quiet and he goes,
yes.
I would say we should love our families. This is a new interview, by the way. I'm not talking about the old one. This is just the last few days. He goes, I would say we should love our families. And then he looks down and he goes, because this is going to happen whether we want it to or not.
Right.
But that's what he said from the beginning.
What does that mean? This is going to happen whether we want it to or not. Like something's like the bigger implication, of course, is that there's some, again, end state that we are going to arrive at vis-a-vis disclosure, where the answer will be so obvious. It'll be above every major city in the world. There'll be a giant disc and we'll all look up and see it. And there will be no question. Barring that kind of a outcome, I think the state of play is going to probably be another 50 or 100 years of some people believe it, some people don't, most people don't care. And for some people, it's their day-to-day reality. They interact with this stuff. They deal with it either on a industrial basis as like employees at a company that manufacture technology built on the back of this reverse engineering program, or as like a individual who has day-to-day experiences, more or less like it is today, just bigger. This is probably never going to be completely fully resolved in a way that would satisfy me, like the Hollywood way, where everyone in the world gets it at the same time. I guess that's what I'm saying. I don't think there's
you sound very
like
skeptical with Elizondo, with the Elizondo's Clues comment, and obviously I broke the news on Doomer Friday where I said that Elizondo's book had been delayed because it's not cleared DOPSR yet. It was due out in May. It was due out in August, but the pre-orders were meant to begin in May. That's not happening. Shortly after, I sound like a dick here, but I also broke the news that it was available on. It was going to be online, and what the synopsis was, because I found it, and I messaged Lue to say this stuff's online. Can I share it? Because I always like permission first if I can get it from people. And it got a quite mixed reaction because a lot of folks were like, it's called Reckoning for those who didn't know. And people are like, oh, here we go, another book. So it was imminent. Now it's a reckoning. So it wasn't that imminent, was it? And now the book, he's got a tour, and here's his second book coming out with To Love Our Family. And these are a lot of the conversations you see. You'll get so many folks who are in the pro Elizondo, what he's done since 2017, that we are here because what Lue Elizondo done, resigning, bringing so much of this forward. But then you've got folks who are a lot more skeptical and raise an eyebrow at all the somber chat. Something's coming.
Sure.
Where do you sit with that, Clint?
Oh, well, how do I feel about it? I think it's important, especially in this space, to not get too attached to any one particular personality, right? Like some personalities sort of command their own gravity well, and they, people get drawn into it, right? Like Stephen Greer, or these big names, and Lue Elizondo is one of those people. My attitude is like, we'll wait and see. We'll just wait and see. I don't need to like throw my my whole weight behind any one particular person who's claiming to know what's going on. The truth will come out in the end, and we'll all be able to sort of see that when it does. But as for Lue's somber comments and the book tour and doing all this stuff, I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to make of Lue, because I don't know the extent of his ongoing, if it is still ongoing, employment is with the federal government, in what capacity. I mean, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that we just don't know. So what you see front facing is a guy on a book tour, going on podcasts. My sense with Lue is that his job, his role, if there is an official role that's coming down from somewhere else, and he's got a boss to answer to, is perception management, public perception management. He seems to be shaping the conversation and trying to influence the direction of the conversation. He's very good at communicating on camera. He clearly has media training. Fun fact, he and I actually also graduated from the same high school. And his dad, or his family, owned a restaurant called the Columbia that I used to eat at. And he used to wait tables at a Red Lobster in my town. So interesting. But
he's come a long way.
From that, come a long way, Lue. So that's neither here nor there, but just fun fact. So yeah, I don't know. We'll wait and see on Lue, but it is interesting. I mean, I think if you have a skill set and if you have information, and if people want to pay a ticket price to come see you live, then that's, a lot of this is entertainment. We're kind of sitting around telling ghost stories until something big happens. So to the extent that he's got, a tour and is selling books, I think that's fine. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to go. Yep. But I'd be looking at the information and where that leads, and asking bigger questions about, what is the direction of all this headed towards? Does it? You have people like Luna and Burleson and Burchett who are saying they've come out of skiffs and they're like, if you could see what I just saw in there, you'd be a believer too. I can tell you right now, dadgum aliens are here.
That is such a good Luna impression.
So it's good. She started smoking.
So Luna, hey man.
So I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question, but
you did, and it's fair, because I think Lue's become such a polarizing figure. Lue Elizondo, I hate pronouns. Elizondo's become such a polarizing figure in the topic, and I think it's a little bit like that Batman quote from Alfred, where you die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And I think the longer you're in the UFO topic, I don't think there are many folks who have managed any longevity without becoming some kind of polarizing figure, particularly when you're coming from government or military. I think the only person really in recent years who it's never 0-100, there's always a split, but David Grush still seems to have that overwhelming support from people who trust and believe in what he's doing, what he's saying. There's always detractors. Is it fair to say, though, Dan, if Lue Elizondo hadn't showed pictures of crop circles and chandelier reflections, there would have been more support? Because I see a lot of folks who, especially at the time, would message me and say, I followed Elizondo until those missteps. Sure. And for them, that was too much, forgetting all the stuff he had done.
Sure. First of all, you mentioned Grush. I also want to point out, we've only known who David Grush is for less than 3 years. And he still has time to sour people's opinion. And there may be things he does in the future that will rub people the wrong way. But same with Lue, I don't think that should diminish the work that's being done. I think that, like Clint said, we wouldn't be where we're at without what Lue has done. With the crop circle thing, the irrigation circles and the chandelier. When that stuff happened, I asked a couple people who know Lue. I'm like, what is this? Like, how, this is inexcusable. How does this happen? When you're an intelligence guy, your job is to know what is what, and you're doing that, and you're like supposed to be one of the main voices in this community. That can't happen. And I was told over and over that like his intentions are not bad. He gets excited and just wants to share things, which still is irresponsible and shouldn't happen. But I don't think he has bad intentions. I do think he wants truth for people. I do think he has sincere intentions, whether he's selling a book or doing a tour or not. Everyone has a right to make a living, especially when you step away from a fantastic career with benefits and you got a good salary. You should be able to do whatever you want to support yourself and your family. And like someone said, no one's being forced to support it.
And it's funny how that changes then, because something we saw when Dylan Borland came forward and Matthew Brown was an outpouring of support from the UFO community, quote unquote, saying we have to go fund me these guys, we have to raise money. And that does beg a separate question around some of these organizations that claim to raise money for whistleblowers, where that money is going. Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
But there seems to be like an outpouring of support. But then for others, it's no, don't try and make any money back. To your point, do these guys go back to Red Lobster and bust tables?
You touched on something that I would like to talk about just for a second. Of these whistleblower funds that are being created by and I don't know much about these organizations, and I'm not talking shit. I think they both do good things, but like the UAPDF and Soul Foundation have both claimed to be trying to do things to help support whistleblowers financially in their lives. And speaking to these guys, from my understanding, as far as I know, no one's ever gotten any help from anybody. So there's some kind of, I don't know what's going on there, but there's something that's not adding up as far as that goes. Hopefully something will come along to address that sooner than later. What was your other question? I'm sorry.
Around again, it was around the unfairness between we'll do a GoFundMe for Borland, Brown,
sure.
But then other guys, when they do start, so say Grush comes out next week and announces his memoir in a book, and it's going to be a tell-all. I mean, I would personally quite like that, but I think you would then see you would then see folks going, here we go, here comes the book. That this is him. He's in it to make money, and you're like, well, what do you want the guy to do? Like, do you not want him to tell a story? Is he not allowed to do that? Well, there seems to be like a rule or a law, Clint.
But those people are going to be there anyway, forever. Yeah. There will always be someone who's like, I don't buy this. None of this makes sense to me, and that's fine. You know, what do we do about that? We do nothing, because what is our role? You know, are we? I don't look at my job as someone who produces media in this space as like my job is to convince everyone that this is real. My job is just to talk about it and talk about what's going on and ask questions, and that's what the role of a vibrant community is. And I think, Dan, it might have been you a couple weeks ago on a Doomer Friday, but you said something along those lines, and you were like, just talking about how it's sort of like the responsibility of us to decide what the spirit of the conversation is. If it's a genuine conversation built around curiosity and a genuine interest in the topic. And not allowing people to tear each other down just because, right? If it turns into that, then we're doing it wrong. There's no reason to get in to like arguments about who's right and who's wrong, because no one really has the full picture. And I think that's really important to remember. Stand back from it. Don't get so wrapped up in each individual person and who's got Dylan and Matt Brown. You know, the outpouring of support for those guys is because they are real, genuine human beings, and that comes through on camera. It's why it's so important when like these guys are genuinely terrified, and you can see it, you can hear it in their voice. And they look like you and me. They look like regular people because they are. And this is the thing. Our job is to give as much positive reinforcement to the people who are out there doing the work as we can. That's how I see it. So these guys are out there putting their lives on the line, giving up all of their benefits, their whole career, walking away from everything that they trained for, however long to be qualified to be able to do. Now they are literally like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent next month. It's maybe there's a GoFundMe, or maybe someone will, that's crazy. If if the people in the audience want to see this conversation move forward, yes, I do think we have to find ways to support those guys, and not just those two individually, but in general terms. But it's up to our community to police itself, monitor these groups who are saying like, oh, we're helping whistleblowers, give us money. Someone's raising money for some kind of a thing. We need to do our due diligence as well and be a responsible community. And I think we'll make more progress, make their job easier, make the whistleblowers' job easier, make the guerrilla journalists' job easier, not harder. Don't fight these guys. Jeremy's out there fighting these battles for us. Dylan and Matt are out there, putting their lives on the line for us to know the truth. They don't have to do this. They don't need this. But if we want to get that truth, we can't also be fighting with these guys at the same time. I guess that's my sense of it. We just have to get our mind right around this whole conversation.
It's very easy to sit back and judge people, but for everyone judging, like, what have you done to advance this conversation in any way whatsoever? Most people haven't. You just criticize on Twitter or whatever, which is fine. It's a free world, freedom of speech. But you have to acknowledge that these people are actually doing the work and making sacrifices that a lot of people can't even fathom.
And to be fair, like I like Jeremy. I would consider him a friend. I don't know him as well as Dan, but we hung out in Austin and hung out with Chris, and consider Chris a friend as well. But I can tell you this: sitting around like a campfire with those two guys, just eating barbecue and telling ghost stories, they have different brains. Just straight up, they are running different software. The two of them don't talk like each other. And with Gerb in the mix, it's like trying to understand 3 different languages. You've got like a guy speaking Japanese, and then these other two. And Jeremy thinks really fast. This is another thing I wasn't really ready for, is like he comes at you quick and it's just like a data dump, but he skips over sometimes like every 15th word. And you're like, wait, back up. I can see how it's frustrating, but you need these guys. You need the people who can think that way to do this job, because no one else fucking will. And to Dan's point, I don't, when I read these shitty comments from people online, I'm like, well, what have you done?
Yeah. What are you doing?
Start a podcast, go out there and put your face on YouTube every day for 2 years, 3 years, and talk about this consistently and do it well. And then we'll talk, but
I feel that was a personal attack on me.
Get your shit together, Andy. You got to practice more.
So Elizondo hosted a Q&A 24 hours ago, and I just want to highlight some of the questions I found interesting that he answered. Some of them just curious. One of them, I don't know if it's really just tongue-in-cheek or if I'm way looking into it too much, right? But first one was a guy called Brad said, what frequency do the folks on the International Space Station report seeing objects, monthly or daily? Elizondo said, more than you might think. The exact number varies over time. Get your guys' quick thoughts on that whole space station. So are we getting to a point where we've gone in the last, even 10 years, where drones have gone from pretty expensive hobbyist things to you can go and pick up a drone in a shop for like $10, £10, whatever it might be. Obviously, varying quality. How long is it before private individuals can get satellites or some kind of drone in space or orbit off their own back? And I don't mean Musk, you have to be a billionaire. I mean, how soon does that happen? Because surely at that point, people should start seeing things and recording things that aren't, under the guise of NASA.
Clint?
Well, I mean, in terms of civilian tech, off-the-shelf technology to do this on their own, there's a company that I'm interested in learning more about right now. I think they're called Eldeon. I don't know how to pronounce it, if that's the correct pronunciation, but my understanding is they sell a sensor suite like in a box. It's sort of like a turnkey package that you can switch on, and it scans the area around you and uses their own software to sort of parse the data into something that actually is usable. And their idea, and I don't know what the price was, but it's not, they weren't cheap, but they weren't like out of the, it's like a car. Like if you want to buy like a cheap car.
25 grand or something?
Like 10 grand 25? Or something.
Oh, was it that? Okay.
Yeah, something like that. I'll have to look. He's going to be at Contact. I want to talk to him, the one of the founders. But this is the thing. Like we already have it. Like you've got all right. So Chris Bledsoe, you've got Chris Bledsoe posting videos of orbs almost every day, right? And some of them look really good, like great quality. Some of them look a little weird. Some of them don't. He says they are orbs. He says those are UAPs. Okay, but if that's what it looks like, then that's what we have. But Bob Lazar straight up tells you, yeah, this is real. I worked there. I was in one. And people still choose not to believe it. In terms of like what you could show someone to blow their mind, I really don't know anymore. We're kind of past that age now where photos and videos are enough, because there's so much AI nonsense, and the weight that a photo carries, that an image carries, is only as good as the chain of custody, right? And so like we had Bill Nelson. Bill Nelson did a Q&A with all the panel from NASA. This was like 2 years ago, and I think it was James Fox was in the audience, and he stood up and asked him a question. And Bill Nelson's like, "We don't have any information on UFOs or anything like that, or UAPs, but we're going to get to the bottom of it." Well, cut to last week, they released all of that stuff in the first tranche of UAP files, and in there is a photo of a triangle over the moon. From which mission was it? How many? I forget. How many?
It was from 70. It was 1972. Apollo 12.
Apollo 12. Right. So 1972. So they've been sitting on this stuff. They just directly, I forget what Bill Nelson's role is at NASA, but he's telling you we don't know anything about this. And then a couple months or 2 years later, they're releasing files. They obviously do. I mean, it's just, we're going to keep going around in circles until a craft appears above a city for a week and stays there. I think that's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
I don't think it was Apollo 12. I think it says here like 17 or 16 maybe. It wasn't 13 because that was Tom Hanks. So, fair enough.
I think NASA is hiding a lot of stuff that I do hope comes to light.
But again, it's like who at NASA? NASA's a big organization.
Of course.
Like,
yes.
Is it you walk in as the main guy and it's like, okay, that's the vault with the UFO stuff?
Right.
Or is it similar to a president where, Bill Nelson's an administrator, he doesn't need to see the stuff that's in there, and that's under lock and key elsewhere.
Yeah.
I just think that we're getting to a point where it's not going to be possible to maintain this forever, right? It's perfect secrecy forever is impossible. There's no way. And the United States is not the only player in this game anymore. We'd like to think we are, but we're not. And China plays a huge role. Russia plays a huge role. We're finding out Japan actually has a ton of stuff that they've been sitting on that they're going to start to release. And it might just get to a point where people are of the mind that around the world, this is not the topic that needs to really be classified anymore, and it needs to be opened up a little bit. And we might find ourselves in a situation where, like when the Soviet Union dissolved, and in that period during the late 80s, early 90s, when it was sort of falling apart, and George Knapp was able to get all this information out, we might find something like that happening, where we have some kind of new scenario no one planned for, where the Chinese make an open statement, or maybe the Vatican comes out and says something. I could see a scenario like that. It's I don't know how much better it's going to get than the president going, declassify the UFO files, and then they start coming out. I mean, that's pretty.
Yeah, the Japan thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, right, but I don't see many folks saying this. However, the guy who made the comment in the statement from Japan didn't say they were going to release lots of stuff. Everyone else said that. What he said was, he was asked about the US releasing stuff, and 2 of the files are filmed in around that region, Indo-Pacific Ocean or whatever it was. And he said, because it pertains to our national security, having these 2 videos, we would of course look at them, and then anything we would do on our own regarding UFOs or UAP releases would be on a case-to-case basis. I then saw everyone jump on that and say, oh, Japan are getting ready to release.
Yeah.
For me, the guy just made a statement to say, the US has released 2 videos, they're related to Japan, anything we ever released would be case to case. I've seen nothing to say Japan's releasing, but a lot of folks online jumped on it. Dan, you agree with me on that?
Yeah, it's funny to see how quickly stuff gets spun kind of out of control. I mean, it kind of happened with those pastors like a couple weeks ago, where one rumor gets started, and I've been guilty of it plenty of times, where you hear something that's so exciting and juicy and oh my god, that you just, before you even look into it, just repost it, and then it just goes and goes, and then you can't.
Before you know what, Japan's disclosing all their UFO records, and actually the guy just said, "Yeah, we've seen the 2 US ones, and anything it was actually quite reserved. The statement that we're not going to release anything other than on a case-by-case basis if we had to. So, but that seemed to blow up that people jumped on that. I might be wrong, but I would put good money on that's the case. But to your point, Clint, around other people, I had people asking me this around today in the Discord. Why don't they just drop everything? Why are the states doing this where it's bit by bit, release O1, release O2, release, and I'm going to get to that in a second with you about what to expect in further releases. My company I work for day to day is clearly closing down operations across the country. Like, there's been major restructures over the last couple of years where small groups, and then last year 3,000 people at one go were paid off. Okay, so the company is clearly changing model, going offshore where it's cheaper, less folks. That's just really obvious to see. Why not just close it all down at once and open up elsewhere? Well, that's a bit chaotic. For me, there's a lack of control within that situation, that you do it stage by stage by stage. So if you've got something as important as releasing major evidence of non-human intelligence, you do it bit by bit. You give a couple of drops to tease the general public. You then maybe give something a little bit more, because what it allows you to do is have checkpoints along the way to go, here's where we are. What's the public reaction? What's the public perception? Where are we geopolitically right now? Is this something we want to keep doing? And it gives you the opportunity as and when to pull back or push forward. So for me, that's a really obvious reason that they're doing this bit by bit. Maybe there's something sinister or malicious at play. Maybe they just want to dump some crap and then see if it fades away. But 1 billion views in like a week and a bit, like you said, that's mainstream. There is no website getting 1 billion views outside of OnlyFans probably that gets 1 billion views in a couple of days, let alone a week. So that's crazy numbers. And you're right, Clint, UFOs have gone mainstream. If that's the case, how long it stays mainstream can depend on what comes out. So I think there's a massive control measure there. I've only got you guys for a limited time, so I want to go through some more Elizondo stuff before I ask you about the files. Elizondo was asked, do you believe the 4-race taxonomy is correct? Hal Puthoff was just on Diary of a CEO, along with Dan Farah, director of Age of Disclosure, and he mentioned that given the people he's spoken to that have been involved in crash retrieval programs, legacy programs, that there are at least 4 races of non-human intelligence that we are aware of. Lue's response to that was, why stop at 4? Not really giving much away, but curious on your thoughts. Dan, we'll come to you first on the whole number of races thing, because this is, for me, something I'd love to bring up on a Doomer Friday or another time with you guys, because I think there's like a big conversation around all of that. I can go for days on that stuff.
I think it may have been you in a recent conversation that we've had where if there's one, there's thousands. Was that you that said that? I think maybe. I don't know, but I agree with that.
I believe that. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, if we're talking about the size of the universe, and if we're kind of coming to find out that maybe it's not a case of something traveling across the universe, it's more just like finding a way to get somewhere immediately. I don't think there's any limit to what could possibly be here. But did Hal go into detail about, is it the main 4 that we all know? Is that what he kind of confirmed? Was it Greys?
I can't remember, because if I say yes, I'm going to potentially get confused with Eric Davis's comments and statements. But obviously, Stephen Bartlett's podcast is quite a serious one, and for that discussion to be had alone on there, even just the aliens, UFO stuff on there is a stretch for Bartlett. But
sure,
he entertained it.
Sure. I think for me, I have to have a certain amount of trust in the people saying stuff, and I'm the kind of person where I know people are like, they do the trust me bro thing. Trust me, bro. Trust me. I think the majority of people do not lie about huge things. I think there are probably some that do, but Hal is someone where he may have done some weird things in his past, but I think his information is pretty upfront and honest. So if Hal speaks about something, I tend to take it as pretty close to gospel. So if he's saying that they have confirmed 4, which I believe, I don't know if he said it or someone said, those are 4 that have been like recovered from craft here, then I think there's something to it. Why wouldn't there be?
4 seems like low to me.
Sure. I mean, we've heard of the main 4, right? What else? I mean, But then
Short
Grush is
grays,
also
tall grays, reptilians, and Nordics.
Mantids.
and
You get
Oh, and
mantids.
mantids. Yeah, mantids.
Yeah, I think
too.
the grays go together. But and then Grush had also on Rogan made a comment about, you know, you're looking at something that's biological, but you have no idea what you're even looking at. Like the morphology, you can't even explain it. And I would love to know what he meant by that. Someone speculated that there was a craft that had, I don't know if it was Kingman or Aztec or something, where it took them so many years or decades to get inside that by the time they got inside, whatever was alive had turned to mush. So you don't even know what it looked like before they got to it because everything was rotten and deteriorated.
If it was
So,
alive.
yeah, there you
If,
go.
if,
Yeah.
it, if it was even alive in the first
Yep.
place.
Good point. Good
In
point.
terms of sentient.
Yep.
I mean,
That's
just
right.
think about, like, you know, you've got Bob Lazar said how many different types of craft. There was the Jello mold. There was the disc,
9
the
different
sport
ones,
model.
I think, right? Yeah.
Okay, 9. And
The top
then
hat.
if you believe Dan Burrish, you've got, you know, he saw a similar thing where he walked through a hallway and there was a very similar hangar set up to what Bob described, possibly the same one. And he described at least 4 or 5 different types of craft. What I'm curious about, I think that 4 is a low number. It's probably more than 4, but I'm interested to know about the people who come off of these crafts. Are they representative of the total population of their point of origin, or are they part of an elite class? Like, how many astronauts are alive right now? You know, like how many? Probably not 10,000. Probably not 1,000. It's probably, you know,
Yeah.
Does everyone in their culture get the opportunity to do what they're doing, or is it just this elite few that travel from place to place?
Yeah.
I'm interested in that. I would love to know about the culture. You know, the Mantids, they have different color robes. They have these purple robes with sometimes jewelry and stuff, and sometimes the Nordics are described with like headgear and blue velour kind of suits, and all of those things imply choices and style and some kind of sense of like proportion and fashion and some kind of like preference for color. And part of my brain wants to say that's a little too on the nose. It feels too Hollywood. This feels like something the CIA would have cooked up in the 1950s and 60s to kind of like placate a audience of people in America that were being primed with science fiction movies. But on the other hand, they've got to look like something. And, you know, what would be the thing that would be most interesting to me is to find out that there are humans or human-like humanoids that look very similar or almost identical to us. I think that would be finding out that humans exist in more than one place would be really shocking.
Yep, it sure would.
More than finding out that like grays or mantids, you know.
For me, the size of the craft is an interesting conversation because why do you need a craft the size of a football field? Why do you have a triangle that is 3 football fields in size? Why do you have some of them that are small? Why can't they actually be tiny? Why aren't they the size of a mouse, like an Apple mouse? You know, what if the flying saucer came down and these tiny little beings came off and they were like, "Hi," and I was like, "Oh, that's mildly underwhelming, but okay."
Sure.
You know, the size of the craft's interesting. One of the best podcasts Elizondo done early on, he was on with an astronaut, and the guy wasn't a UFO person. I can't remember his name. I don't know if you remember this, Dan, even. But they got into talking about the size of craft. And Lue was talking about how it was around like some of them seemed to be made for transport of individuals. Others seemed to be made for kind of shorter scouting type missions. And it was like cigar shaped triangles and they go to different sizes. But you seem to get discs of all different sizes. And that just seems curious where some of them don't even seem to really fit many entities in, but then others seem to be these huge objects, and that just doesn't make much sense to me unless you have multiple folks. But even then, to your point, Clint, I could go off all this is what I'm saying, I could talk all day on this stuff.
Let's do it.
Are different entities designing the same craft in different ways, where fuck it, let's make it 800 foot wide. Others are going, nah, we just need a kind of small one for a couple of these little robots to go in. That kind of stuff kind of is like a bit crazy.
Well, look at what we build. I mean, you got everything from aircraft carriers to, Mini Coopers and
bicycles,
personal drones and bicycle. Yeah, I mean, it's like I feel like the disc has something to do with the function of the craft, and it has something to do with like the field around it. Like that shape is an important shape to make it work. And I feel like triangle is probably another shape that has a different function that requires it to be that triangle shape. So I think there's some things that you could infer by like the design. But yeah,
Elizondo's talked about this, but to do with the designs, where when it's like a disc, it's one propulsion device and it's in a bubble. A triangle requires 3 devices and it will make 3 bubbles around the triangle. So again, you just put multiple devices, whatever is creating these kind of bubbles. And that's also where some of these fighter jets that end up too close to these objects, 1, the pilots can get ill, but 2, they end up using less or more fuel than they expected on their journey because they end up inside of these bubbles partially, and their craft gets affected as well. So yeah, to do with like the size of the craft, technically you could make any shape of craft. You can make a tetrahedron, and you just have to have these devices at the right points to make the right number of bubbles that the craft would be inside. That's apparently one of the explanations around it. So the actual shape wouldn't even make a difference.
So maybe the disc design is the simplest, you're saying? Like it might just be like the most
That's
elegant.
how the field works. Yeah.
It's streamlined.
One unit, streamlined, slick. You can make a bunch of them. But if you want, because I think about like Terry Lovelace and abductees who, Dan, you know a lot more about the abductee world encounters, but we read a lot of the same stuff. And I think one of the things I find most interesting is when you hear abductee accounts of being on board these massive ships. They're like massive, like something out of Star Wars. And they're like, you just see, and they're like, they're under hypnosis and they're going through regression. And they're like, I'm looking around. I see hundreds of people in a giant room. The ceilings are 100 feet high. And I'm thinking about, was it Grush who said that there was a craft? He described a craft that, they went inside and it was the size of a football field.
Yes.
But outside it was like 30 feet.
Talked about that.
Yeah.
The craft being bigger on the inside than the outside. Proper Doctor Who type stuff.
And that like a time, like if you go in and you think you're in there for 15 minutes, you come out, you've been gone for hours, that kind of thing. I think we also have to factor in the idea of the crafts being built to spec. That whole concept is, I like that idea of like, you have this craft is being sent out for one mission. So you hear about like people seeing inside. If you're abducted, you see like a little hole in the wall that just holds one tool, and like everything is completely purpose built. That seems to make sense to me. I like that idea. And then if you're thinking about enormous craft, I wonder if that's the kind of thing where maybe that's something that they live on forever. Maybe they're on like some endless journey of universal exploration. So it has to be big to hold everything. I don't know. I mean, that's what we would do if we were going to go on a mission to explore the universe. We'd try to have everything we needed for the rest of our lives on there. I don't know.
There's a really cool YouTube channel, and I think I sent it to you, Dan. Have you been watching this Mantis and you know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
There was one. Have you seen this, Andy? The Mantis Encounters UFO channel. Okay,
no.
I'll send it to you. But if you look on UFOs, it's called Mantis Encounters, I think, or Mantids Encounters. But it was there's one particular video in there, and it's just collections of people talking about stories of them encountering these mantis beings. And there's one guy, and he's telling a story. He was like, "Yeah, I was on board a craft, and he'd been abducted, and he was like, and they were walking me around from place to place, and I remember going through this hallway, and then I came around, this curve, and there was a bird, like a parakeet, or just like a regular bird flying around this craft. And there were 2 mantis beings trying to catch this bird. And he realized the guide that was walking him around had told him telepathically, it's like, oh, this is a sample creature that we got from this place. And it was kind of like in Flight of the Navigator, where he gets on the ship and there's like the thing eats his hat and like all the little creatures. And every once in a while, when they're taking samples of different life forms, sometimes they get loose. And this was a bird, and it was flying around, and they had to like catch it with this little, I want to say compliance tool, but it's not the compliance tool. It's like something like that. They had something, and they
how absurd! It's so absurd.
Fly into
and so
it's so
fun.
absurd. I believe it.
Yeah.
It's like 100%. I'm like, that sounds like that's the type of detail. Like when I
Yes.
read accounts of abductees who have been on board craft, I'm looking for the thing that is the outlier where it's like, it smells like lemons. I can smell, like something really specific, that would really trigger a memory. When I want to know, what did it smell like? What did it sound like? If you make a noise, does it echo off the walls? All of those little things. And that little detail about the bird, I was like, God, that sounds so off the wall. Why wouldn't I believe that?
Like Jim Sparks, Jim Sparks said that grays smelled like cheese. And then you hear people talk about, like, when you're really close to a gray, like sometimes the skin sparkles. I talked to someone who like woke up and there's something like looking at them real close, and they could see little hairs, small hairs on the back of its neck, like that kind of detail. Like, why add that in if it wasn't? I mean, I guess people could make it up, but like, it's just, I think you're right. Those little details are what make it really interesting and more real to me.
I forgot. And about I wonder, the cheese.
Like, all those details. I found the site, by the way. I think Dan, you've messaged me.
Yeah, I sent it.
I'll check that out. The detail. I often wonder if we sat and wrote down all the tropes of UFOs that we think are real and genuine. Like they come here in craft. There are these types of beings. This is what they do. This is the type of craft that they have. These are the different encounters. That say there was like a group of like 12 people who knew the absolute truth, right? That they would look at your list and go, do you know what? 95% of what you've got is genuinely bullshit. That none of that's true. That 5% there is, but I tell you what, the rest of it's even more ridiculous. And like, to your point, Dan, you're going, yeah, how these craft are built. What if they're not built? What if they're grown or they're seeded? Or these beings themselves, or these beings go, do you know what? When we get to meet them one day, they go, we don't know where we get these from.
Right.
These craft appear. Like they're just there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but how do you make them? We don't make them. And maybe they couldn't even tell you where they come from. And it's, or like you say, maybe they come out some weird plant. They're literally seeded and it's like an organic craft, like the movie Nope. And this thing's like a biologic. So maybe it's something totally ridiculous where we're just allowed to believe all of this stuff. And it's not even misinformation or disinformation. It's just the kind of human element we've put on the topic through decades and decades and decades. Like you say, beings wearing certain robes and having jewelry and all that kind of stuff. All very human.
Logos, yeah.
Yeah, maybe all of that is bollocks. But the other stuff is just so ridiculous and unimaginable that the people who genuinely know go, do you know what? Even the hardcore ufology folks, they're nowhere near the truth on this as to what it is. I would love that if it was like, actually, what you guys think is all this crazy, real, weird stuff. It's nonsense, but it's not even anywhere near as fascinating as the actual truth of all of it would be. Like, I've had the idea. Imagine UFOs, and you're talking about maybe these things are interdimensional and not coming from other planets. What if in the sky they aren't even moving? And I've often said, like, Quantum Leap, when you've both seen Quantum Leap, yeah? Mm-hmm. The original, not the bullshit new one, right? But like, so Sam would be in like JFK times, but he would have Al, who was his hologram friend. But Al was actually in a room in the future, like where he was walking about this just normal room, but he and Sam could see each other. What if these craft are like a platform where beings can go into, where they don't physically leave where they are, but it's almost like the craft itself is just a platform to go in and view in like augmented reality where we are. And that's where we can't even potentially physically interact with some of this stuff. And that's why it does look so weird and why it phases in and out and why it has all these strange lights, because they are literally in a room that's made to look like a ball or a sphere or a disc. And that's how they enter this dimension. That's how they interact. And we're actually moving around them. They aren't moving here. And maybe that might sound ridiculous to some folks, but maybe that's closer to the truth than these craft are flying around our atmosphere. I don't know.
I like that idea. I like it's almost like a Stargate kind of a thing where the craft stays stationary, but it makes travel elsewhere possible when you enter it. I could see something like that. And there, there's, I joke about it, but Stargate has been rumored for a long time to have been kind of filled with real truthful Easter eggs about the UFO. I don't know. Do you have a Stargate guy?
Yeah, I mean the original movie, not the series, but the original movie.
So the series, come to find out, on the series, which was on for like 14 years, it was on for a long time, and they just announced they're going to relaunch it as a continuation from the original universe, not a reboot. So that's interesting. But the original series had actual Air Force personnel on the show from time to time, and they would play them. They would play characters, of Air Force officers, but they were on the show, and a lot of times they would drop in little bits of information that would later surface in the UFO community, but started out in the show. And when you watch in the show, it looks very cheesy and it's very corny. And in one particular episode, they even address it, and they go, within the context of the show, the characters are made aware that there is another show called Wormhole Extreme. And this is like a goofy, it's sort of like a meta examination of the Stargate show. And in the show, the characters are like brought in as consultants on Wormhole Extreme. And the whole purpose of that show existing was to make it seem so stupid that if anyone ever leaked the truth, whatever it was, that they could point to this show and be like, oh, it's just this silly show. And the joke being that that's what Stargate was. It was sort of this place to put all this stuff into the culture. But that could be really interesting. This is the problem, right? Like and actually to go back to your earlier question of like, what would it look like? What is an acceptable end state to get to? What goal are we trying to achieve here? I think the best possible outcome would be one where this technology is available for open scientific study. And those questions can be answered by more than just like Bob Lazar and Barry in a room.
Bob and Barry.
Yeah.
Bob and Barry. You're on the reactor team, Bob. The other guy's dead.
I like what you said, Andy, about the idea of the craft being alive, because then it made me think that for a long time, and we still do, humans use horses to get around. Like we travel on another living being. Why couldn't that be the same somewhere else in the universe on a much grander, more wildly technological scale? It's kind of a cool idea.
I mean, we are on a planet right now which is technically alive, and we're on the skin of it, traveling through the universe at 10,000 miles an hour, whatever it is. So, not to go all magic school bus on people, but I'll skip to the.
Andy, are you a Red Dwarf guy? Did you ever watch Red Dwarf?
Yeah. I've watched Red. Yeah.
You know the one? Was it Real Life episode where they wake up? They were in a VR simulation for the whole time, and the guy's like, "Did you do this? Did you beat the space squid on the phone?" I have this like idea in my head that if we did find out the truth is like there is a galactic federation. We're not in it because we are the dead last fucking dumbest people in the entire galaxy. They're way farther along, and we are just completely backwards. That would be hilarious.
Yeah, we're like the Homer Simpson, when they get locked away when the nuclear inspection comes round in the special cupboard, and we've got the job to do. On that, I'll skip to the really stupid question that Lue. Well, not stupid, but Lue's answer comes across potentially a bit flippant, but maybe I'm looking into it too much. He gets asked, what movie or TV show would you recommend that would prepare us for coming revelations? Lue said, there is nothing out there that can really prepare us. It's a journey each of us must take by ourselves. But for the record, I like SpongeBob SquarePants. So, is he being flippant, or is Lue getting at the fact that, there are things that live under the sea? Am I looking into that too much?
Lue's clues, man. Who knows?
Genuinely, I was like,
I don't know either.
On that, you guys wanted to mention Ross Coulthart and Lue Elizondo. I hadn't seen this. Who wants to take the lead on the Ross Coulthart Elizondo story from the last 24 hours?
So I just tried finding it. I think he deleted it. Let me find out. Okay, he brought it up on Reality Check, and basically, I think, I don't know exactly, but I think what Ross was basically calling out Lue, in a way, just being like, it's time for Lue Elizondo to come clean about his role in the Legacy program. It's been, talked about for a long time, and I think we kind of all know folks that seem to be 100% certain that Lue did program protections for the Legacy program. And he has never really talked about it publicly. Maybe he can't. Maybe he can't legally do it, but I think it would be helpful for people to know like where he's actually coming from, because it does change. It reframes the way he speaks. It reframes the information that he's given. If we did know his role prior to coming forward.
Clint?
I agree with that. I think it's important. Like, this is the guy who I also, I have mixed feelings about Lue because he is very cagey and he's very kind of, he can speak in riddles, and that's annoying. But on the other hand, I mean, he has brought us this far. So I don't know, man. I'm of a mixed mind on Lue. And I'm repeat. What's the original question so I can make sure I'm actually answering the correct question here? The Ross Coulthart thing.
Yeah.
His history with like AATIP and stuff. Yeah, I mean,
No.
you want to be
his history being working for the legacy program, doing like program protections and like intelligence for the actual legacy programs. I don't know which one.
Well,
yeah.
We need to know as much as we can about all these people, and we need to keep asking the questions. And Ross is doing his job by bringing that up and putting it out there and making it a conversational, a point of conversation, a point of discussion. Yeah, there are a lot of questions about Lue and where he's coming from and what his whole, the thrust of his whole effort is and what he's trying to do. I think that's important, and understanding his background is critical for context. But I don't know if it's going to change minds on him. If people know.
I wonder if working for those kind of programs is like being in a gang where like once you're in, you're never out, or like they say in the CIA, even when you retire, you're still kind of like
John Wick.
You're still kind of in the CIA. So I wonder if it's the same way with someone like Lue or others that have come forward.
Well, if he worked protection for the legacy program, he knows what they would send after him. He knows what that looks like when someone has to get, shut down. So I'm sure he's thinking about that every time he talks.
I had it explained to me by someone that, because I asked someone a while back about the whole AAWSAP AATIP thing, and the story still seems so up in the air because you've got different people saying different things. Jay Stratton's book, which is still not close to being released yet from what we can see, would maybe clear some stuff up. And I'm not saying this is right or wrong, so please no one take this and run with it, okay? My understanding was you had the original group AATIP, sorry, AAWSAP, the original group AAWSAP, right, that had Lukatsky and Stratton and stuff. They tried to make that a permanent SAP. They wanted the funding. They wanted to go official. Let's take this to the next level. When that didn't, towards the end, before that was kind of knocked on the head, they brought on Lue as security type angle, whatever that may have been for that organization. Then when they found out they weren't getting the SAP status, it was morphed into AATIP, which was the unofficial. It was put to me a little bit like the Beatles are going to disband and they're going to carry on, but they're not going to be called the Beatles. And actually the only member of the band will be the latest one that joined. And that's what AATIP sort of was. That's how it was put to me. And that Lue did come on with a view to working with AAWSAP into the official program, but the official program never happened. The funding wasn't cleared, and Lue carried it on in this unofficial capacity, which a lot of folks seem to think is kind of right these days. I don't know, because it's so messed up top to bottom, but that would explain a lot for me without explaining everything.
Sure. I think it's also good to, it's my understanding as well is that AAWSAP was an actual official program, and that AATIP is more of like a working group, still doing good stuff, but it wasn't like an actual program. It was a working group.
Yeah, like an offshoot.
Yeah.
So, and do you know what? Something I was going to ask if you guys noticed, like Ross and Lue having a little bit of a to-do. I don't think this happened 3 or 4 years ago. It seemed that everyone was quite tight-knit. Whereas if you look now, and bring in any names here if I'm wrong, there just seems to be so many camps now for these bigger names that they don't really cross-pollinate as much anymore. So you've got Corbell and Knapp, who do their weaponized thing, and they are associated with Borland, Brown, Borland, Brown,
Jeff Nusatelli and Wiggins and sure. Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
Grush.
So that's the congressional stuff. Grush. You've also got Ross Coulthart, who does his own thing. He's got his own sort of bubble, and he's associated, I suppose, with Barber and bringing forward Jake Barber, Skywatcher. He also hosted Grush, didn't he, in one of his first interviews?
He did. The main one. Yep.
Yeah, and the main one. You've then got Elizondo, who seems to be sort of on his own these days. I don't see that he has the ties as much with all of those people anymore. And if you look at Corbell and Knapp, who seem to be doing the groundwork for a lot of this congressional stuff, I don't see Burchett and Luna and co talking about an Elizondo or a Barber. You know, it just seems to be there's all these little different groups that at one point there was so much cross-pollination, but now they've all gone their separate ways for whatever reasons. And is that people protecting their own piece of the pie? Is that people no longer trusting or wanting to work with people? Is that just naturally going their different ways and maybe there's strength in attacking this from different angles? I don't know, but for me it just seems really obvious that 4 or 5 years ago there was quite a lot of, again, I'll just say cross-pollination. It seems to have moved away from that, where people have gone their separate ways and perhaps just not wanted to make it very public. Does that seem fair?
I think it's a sign that the conversation has expanded and matured and more people are a part of it now, and you're seeing it grow. And I think that as it continues to grow, you're going to see more people, come into the discussion and come into the movement and try to make things happen in different ways. And if all goes well, this will be an open question at the next presidential debate, and someone will have to seriously answer it on a debate stage. And I think that would be the signal that we've come not all the way, but we are fully comfortably mainstream around this topic now. So I don't see it as a bad thing. I think it's a good thing.
I also think that I think there's more communication behind the scenes than people realize. I think that a lot of those people are still communicating together with an organized effort to get this thing over the finish line with Congress and the White House and hopefully internationally stuff too. But I think they are still, I think everyone's on good terms. I do think they're all pushing for the same goal, and I do think they are still working together behind the scenes.
I'd like to hope so. It just seems very different publicly, but that could be a deliberate tactic to kind of go their separate ways
and maybe different approaches,
anything, and work on different things. Yeah,
you need a bunch of people to be on this, from coming at it from different angles and with different techniques. I mean, this is it's a conflict. It's a struggle to get at the truth, and and there are a lot of different people holding bits and pieces of the truth, a lot of different groups and organizations and intelligence agencies and corporations. I mean, this is going to be a long slog, but this is what it looks like when it's working. The audience is growing. The website gets 1 billion hits in a week. People are doing podcasts. We're all talking about it. It's on everybody's mind. We're really getting into this subject, and there's no way to keep it secret in that environment forever. Sooner or later, something's got to break. So I think that's a really good sign when you see this much diversity in the space, and I hope it continues to grow.
A couple of final news items then to get your thoughts on. Donald Trump on his Truth Social site yesterday posted a couple of pictures. One of them was, and these are like hyper realistic, obviously, I believe AI, because one of them shows Trump and multiple Secret Service / Men in Black type figures with an absolutely ripped, tall grey alien in chains.
Hot as fuck.
Yeah, this guy is like high rocks to the max. He is CrossFit every morning. Zeta Reticuli, oh my, this guy is,
he's gray maxing. He's gray maxing.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
great.
Yeah. So yeah, what's your thoughts on Trump? Because he posted this, but also one where he's kind of sitting at a desk, and it's like one of the Star Wars battles where it's all shit getting blown out the sky and laser guns and stuff. Is this Trump not taking this seriously? Is it alluding to something in his own way?
May I?
Dan, go on.
May I, Clint? Do you mind?
Please.
Because I am hot to trot on this one. It is when I saw that yesterday. For whenever he posts stuff like that, I'm like, is this real? Then I'm like, of course it is. But you see, what he's putting across is an alien at a military base in handcuffs and shackles. And in my mind, I'm like, is that seriously like the image that we want to put forward, like for humanity? It blows my mind that it wouldn't be like a handshake or even like drinking tea together. Like it's like, I'm in control, you're in chains, you are our property. And then the other one of him, he posted two different versions because he couldn't pick which one was cooler, I guess, of him in some spaceship for Space Force hitting buttons with explosions in space behind him. And it's just like, for me, it's like, this is the complete wrong message to be sending if we are on the precipice of having some kind of open contact with a new species that's either from here or elsewhere. It seems so irresponsible to put that foot forward and to put that into like society's mind, because if people are just getting on board now, like aunts and uncles and even young folks who are just getting into it now, if they're seeing the president posting a gray in chains, maybe your default is, oh, this is a threat, we should be concerned, like these things are here to hurt us. Thank God we have bombs and nukes that we can blow up in space. I just think it's incredibly dangerous and stupid, honestly.
Clint?
And irresponsible.
You know, Trump is not a serious man. He is obviously a fucking dumbass. He clearly doesn't know what he's doing. And to the extent that, like, according to, I just threw this in Gemini just to see, but his net approval rating right now, according to natesilver.net and jelliotmorris.com, is negative 18.9%. His approval rating is a record low 34%, and his disapproval rating is 63%. This guy is trashing the economy. He's got us wrapped up in a war that's causing the price of gasoline to go through the roof. Americans are sick and tired of his stupid fucking bullshit. And I think that he's throwing up a bunch of goofy UFO alien stuff to just distract from that. That's really all this is. That's all this is. He is not serious about UFOs like we are serious. I guarantee you, just in this last 2 hours, we have had a more substantive conversation about this topic than he's ever had with anybody. Now, whether or not he's been read in on stuff or whatever, you know, maybe, but this is a guy who he's the president, and he sued the American government for $10 billion. He sued his own government for $10 billion because the last administration gave him a hard time. And they created, this just got announced, a $1.7 billion slush fund that they can use to just draw from for all of his
for people that have been affected.
$1.776 billion fund to compensate President Donald Trump's allies who claimed they were unfairly targeted by the previous administration. So, you know, look, I don't take him seriously. I don't think anybody should take him seriously. I think that, you know, if he's going to sign off on the UFO thing, great. I'll believe it when I see it. So far, I haven't seen anything that's really blown my skirt up in terms of the release. So everything else to me is a big distraction.
On that, there is two little things to add. So kind of breaking news. Leading report has come out saying the second release of UFO UAP files are actively being processed and are expected to be published very soon. And that is per the chief Pentagon spokesman, Sean Parnell. And Ross Coulthart, 16 hours ago on X, says, I am told the president, I think, Dan, you'd seen this, the president of the US is indeed now briefed on legacy UAP crash retrieval programs. The president, Marco Rubio, Representative Luna, Burleson and Burchett have pushed hard for the answers that other presidents failed to get. The big question is what President POTUS will tell the American public now he knows what's happening. President Trump knows much more now than the original UAP task force brief sent to the White House in his first term.
But what do you trust him to do with that information? You know what I mean? Like, this is a man who, you know, every war game simulation we had ever run said, don't go to war with Iran. Every military commander who had the experience and who had ran exercises on this said, don't do it. They all told him the same thing, and he still did it. This is a guy who's not fit to lead. He's obviously not a good leader. So clearly, like putting him in charge of this would be the worst possible move. And I find it very hard to believe personally that anybody in the legacy program is looking at Donald Trump like, yeah, he seems stable. There's a guy that we can really trust with the top tier information of like what is actually happening. I don't believe that. And I don't believe it because I, as a reasonable human being who has a lot of friends who are former military and have worked at various levels, I know they don't take this shit seriously. Like, this man is not an intelligent guy. In his first term, we learned that in order for him to sit through an entire briefing, they had to make the briefing like a page and a half long, double spaced, and every other line had to have his name in it, and it had to have a lot more pictures because this guy doesn't even read the shit.
Pop-up books.
Fucking pop-up books.
Mate, I'm not against that. Listen, I'm not going to lie. That to me, that sounds appealing. Maybe not when you're the president, but you know, if you're going to sit me in Teams meetings all day and someone went, "Look, do you want like a 1-page abridgment of everything?" Yeah, go for it. Do you know what? There's plenty of pictures, double line space. But I get your point when you're the POTUS that perhaps you just have to put up with, you know, some detail on the geopolitical crashing.
I'm sorry to step on your
go on.
line there, Andy, but we're talking about the most important subject there is.
Yeah.
That's what we are told by the people in the know, right? People like Lue Elizondo, all these people who are in the know, they look you right in the eye and they'll go, there is nothing more important than this. They will kill anybody, anytime to protect this secret. This is the most well-kept secret ever. So I'm supposed to believe that they are going to sit down in a room with Donald Trump, who is completely out to lunch half the time. And they're going to tell him all of this. This same guy who a couple weeks ago threatened to wipe out an entire civilization in what we understand to be a nuclear strike, and then walked it back the very next day. Like, this is not a stable man. He's not in a position to negotiate on behalf of humanity. And this is my bigger problem with the whole cover-up in general, is just that we don't know who's in charge of overseeing decisions that are making that impact the future of all life on this planet.
Right.
So that's important. We really need to know who's in charge here, or at least know that someone's in charge here. And it's not just like whoever the president happens to be, because guess what? I don't like Trump. And maybe that's, people hear that and they think, I'm a jerk and whatever. But the next time around, if it's not your guy, someone you don't agree with, we're going to be in the same position, right? We have to believe in the system that is overseeing this to believe that it's serving us. And I don't think people have that belief. And
I don't believe the president runs the country in that way. Yeah. I don't think so. I don't think any president would make those decisions or be privy to the real deep secret shit.
I want to say,
if there was, it would have been H.W. Bush, former director of the CIA.
Yeah.
And Ronald Reagan.
Because of previous ties and the
SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars, like all of that. I mean, those are guys who were, George Bush was the director of the CIA. Dick Cheney is supposed to have been the head of the legacy program, according to the best sources that we have. Dick Cheney was the Secretary of Defense, right? Under the Bush's administration. Vice President, Vice President, and when he was Bush Senior.
Yeah.
But he's been in government for so long. So these guys are very, Dick Cheney's a very serious, intelligent guy, or was. Donald Trump is just not in that same.
I want to say one thing, if I could.
Class.
First of all, it's weird that I want to push back on one thing that you said, because you and I feel the same way about him. And I know people hate talking about politics and whatever. And if you're listening and you feel the other way, we can still be friends. We can still have conversations, by the way. But I will say that as much as we dislike the way he operates, we have to acknowledge and give him props. No administration has done more for this topic than this one. And if you look at the dump that happened last week, that's a great example of that. And we got more coming. So I have to give him props for giving the kind of executive order to go forward on this, whether it's for his own personal gain with his investments in like plasma companies or fusion companies or whatever it is. I'm sure there's a reason why he's greenlighting this, but I still, as someone who cares about this, I have to appreciate the fact that he did and is doing that. As much as I don't like to give him props, I have to do it when it's needed.
And that's fair. And I do. And I'm glad that he did it. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation. Politically, we have our differences, and that's been true of, who doesn't have their differences with whoever the president is at a time, at any given moment. So, sorry if I upset anybody, but
jeez,
I
dude,
think the
God,
numbers speak.
That's
for
okay. I'm
just
just going to cut the last 10 minutes out. You sound like a massive Trump fan. Just be honest next time, Clint.
Sorry.
No, so before we start to wrap up, guys, because you've been with me a long time now and you've got lives to lead. On that next release, very quickly, Dan, you've not got a life to lead. What are you hoping to get? What are we going to get? Release 02.
I still haven't gone through the entire batch of the last stuff, but it seems like it started like 40s, 50s, 60s, sort of. And I wonder if the idea is to kind of slowly move us through the history of this, which I think I would like to see more. Like, I think the videos and stuff that were released were cool. The pictures are cool, but the documents are really interesting. You're seeing stuff like you're seeing memos and internal, correspondence from people that never thought that this stuff would be public. This is long before we had FOIA, long before there was the Freedom of Information Act here, when people were speaking freely, thinking it would never be heard before, and openly talking about flying saucers and crashes and sort of like touching on a little bit of recoveries and stuff. So I would like to see more. If you're going to release more, it has to advance the conversation, which means more detailed things, more, so I don't know if it was Luna or someone, or it's been said that the idea is to start small. And as we go, it's going to get a little bit more difficult for society to kind of accept, a little bit more, let's take a deep breath and let's learn some stuff. So I'm comfortable with moving forward and just let's get weird. Let's get into let's get into the hard stuff. Let's talk about bodies. Let's eventually talk about abductions, which I think we all agree will be the last thing that's probably talked about. But I just want it to be advanced. And I think if there's a few videos that kind of make you pause a little bit, that's huge. But talking to someone who sort of knows what's coming, it's not Jeremy, but somebody else, they said, they're working on stuff that's going to be so impressive and so important and it has nothing to do with photos or videos, like where you're not even going to be concerned about the photos and videos with some of the things they're hoping to bring forward. And that has me just like, well, what could that possibly be? And give it to me now. I want it now.
Clint?
What's the question again? What specifically?
So what are your thoughts on Donald Trump?
Oh, yeah. Great. Love this guy.
Who are you voting for in the mid? No. So what you expect to get in the next release and what you hope to get?
Can I share my screen for a second? Is there a way I could?
You can.
Let me see here if I could do this. I want to share this window. I look at, this is the slide from Karl Nell's presentation at the Soul Symposium in, 2024, I think? Did this go through?
Yeah, it would be 25. Oh, wait, sorry, I need to add it. Yeah.
There you go. So, if you look at this slide now, Karl Nell has worked at the top executive level of Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman and his Army Futures Command. And this is the guy who publicly on the stage at, I forget, what was it, the conference that Cloakus was hosting?
Salt.
That's right. He said zero. What was it? Zero chance. What was this statement that there was 100% likelihood that they were here? They said, what are the chances?
Zero doubt. Zero doubt.
Zero doubt. That's what
Zero doubt.
Zero doubt. So then at the Soul Symposium, he gives this presentation, and Soul Symposium is a part of the Soul Foundation. They put it on every year, and at that event, they have scholars and researchers from all different disciplines come together for a genuine academic discussion about the real information that is available to researchers about this topic at the very cutting edge. And the goal here is to kind of bring this discussion into respectable academic circles. Anyway, when he did a presentation at the Soul Symposium, he shared a number of slides, and one of them leaked. And this is one of the slides that leaked. And it lays out a sort of a strategic roadmap to an end state of disclosure. And the dates on this are very interesting. Phase 1 through phase 5. He breaks it down. Phase 4 and phase 5 is like engagement with this phenomenon, open engagement. Phase 4 ends in October of 2034. And we're in phase 2 right now, correlate signatures. The next phase of this is characterize performance. And if you look at the lines of effort on this chart, he's got public sector, government policy, law, philosophical investigation, humanities, ethics, anthropology, sociology, physics, chemistry, material science, intellectual property, industry, economics, and trade, private sector, industry, and society. This last one, D. I think what you're seeing here, in addition to being a very well-organized strategic plan that's laid out by somebody who's done a million presentations, given a lot of PowerPoints, I think you're seeing the roadmap to disclosure, and I think you're seeing exactly where we are, where you are here. And I think what's happening is they are going to declassify certain pieces of technology so that they can bring them into open commercial development and monetize them fully. I think that's what you're seeing. And I think this is a roadmap that takes time to lay out. They have to unpack a lot of history. They have to set the stage. But ultimately, this is about a group of people, a faction within the legacy program who seems to be convinced that it's time to go ahead and roll some of this stuff out and just make it happen. Can't sit on it forever. Got to do something with it. So in terms of what the next release or the release after that will hold, I don't know in terms of the specific, which one's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But I do believe that this is a process, and I believe there is a plan. And I think we are on step 2, phase 2 of a 5-phase plan that apparently we will know by the end of 2034. So you got 9 more years. Or what is it, 8 more years?
I think the interesting thing for me isn't necessarily release 2. What's going to give me a real idea of where we go with this is release 3. Release 2, I think, is going to be at least 40 or 46 of those videos that Jeremy, George, and others have helped bring forward. That's fine. Release 3, it'll be the point where, is it more of the same? Are we getting new stuff? Has it gone up a level? Is that where we start getting some of the stuff Dan's hinted at, where people start to go, oh, this is a bit different? Because you've got people's attention. You do have public attention now. They're going to look at release 2, and if it's more of the same, like we said earlier, Clint, I think you'll get folks going, okay, but release 3 is where you start to lose people or you gain traction. I struggle to see how it even just stays the same. So for me, the second release, by the by, the third release for me is where it's okay. You either really move forward with this, or I would expect to see Burchett, Luna, and Burleson say they're really disappointed, frustrated, and things are being obfuscated.
Well, I think the other thing that bothers me about that I feel like weird about the whole way this is rolling out, the original disclosure legislation that was submitted to Congress for that did not pass had a very detailed plan for how this information would be discovered, analyzed, classified, and ultimately released on a timetable. And this would be a timetable that is like revisited every couple of years to make sure that the things that have remained classified would get looked at again and potentially declassified about every few years, every 5 or 10 years. But there was a real plan here. And what we're seeing with Trump's disclosure is not that. We're seeing him do what he does, which is give an order, and then everyone scrambles to try and figure out what he means. And then we all in the public are trying to understand what it all means. And there's really no system here. We're relying on the DOD and the Pentagon to be truthful, for one. And we're taking whatever they submit at, face value. And in their opening statement, their opening remarks about all this, their pitch was basically like, we're going to release what we have, and we don't have any statement to make on it. Let the public make up their own mind. My issue with that is, no, you do have the answer. You are the guys with the $1 trillion defense budget who have spent 70 years working on this. We need that answer. We don't need more grainy photos. We've got all that. We've got Bob Lazar telling us he's been inside the sport model. We know what the hangars look like. We've got all this information. We need a declarative statement from somebody in a position of authority that others will trust to say, this is what it is. Now, starting tomorrow at 9:00, we're going to move forward with this information as our new baseline. And we just don't have that. What we have is this confusing drop and maybe 2 or 3 more. What happens when the next administration comes in? If a new administration comes in, do they continue this program? What happens when Burchett and Luna are gone? If they are, do they stick around forever? I would be really interested to see what happens if Marco Rubio tries to run for president, which I think he will. And I also think Tucker Carlson will probably try to run. And that would be a really interesting debate stage to see a UFO question come up between those two. So yeah, I don't know where we go from here, but I feel like there is a timetable at play.
I agree. We need a new baseline. That for me is really important. And that for me is a public baseline. UFO community are all going to be at very different places as to where their baseline is. It's all real, abductions, cattle mutilations, orbs, Palladian, crystals, all that stuff. We've all got different places where we sit on that. But the public baseline still isn't, this is real, what do we do about it? Or how do we move forward? We need to get it to there for the public to then allow things. And I think you're right. There needs to be a new baseline for this.
You don't think we're there already?
As a general public, no?
I think, I feel different. I feel like when I look at podcasts, right? Like
we had this discussion on Doomer Friday, yeah.
Let's have it again.
Just because I think it is relevant here. It's like we just said the aliens.gov or whatever it was website got 1 billion hits in a week. Dan and I talk a lot about like comedy podcasts that we like and different comedians and stuff. And when you see comedians, and I'm not talking like small comedians, I'm talking about like like huge comedians and anybody that's in the Rogan sphere, and you can not like Rogan, that's fine, but they're talking about top tier podcasters. They have serious conversations. They're not making jokes about it anymore. They're like, oh, this is real. Oh yeah. That's when they get serious. They start talking about the UFO thing, and then they kind of quiet down. And I'm noticing the tone of the conversation in the podcast sphere has shifted to almost 100%. Oh my God. Can you believe it? It's happening.
And even in regular life, even in social life, I'm feeling that with friends and family. It's less like, so what's going on? It's more like, so what's happening? What's going on with this? It does feel more serious in society. I agree with you, Clint. I think it is. I think we're closer than we think.
We had
because it's relevant for me. This is my response to that. Because it's relevant, because it's in the news cycle. Take this away. 4 weeks, no drops. Those podcasts, those comedians, not Rogan. Forget, because Rogan does UFOs generally anyway. It all goes away. It stops. This is there because of momentum, and it's in the news cycle the same way it was when Grush was relevant. So we had this discussion on Doomer Friday where I said the UK isn't there at all. So we can't say it's mainstream, because for me the general public includes worldwide, not just what's happening in the US. So if it's not touching the UK, and again, I had listeners get in touch from Australia, France, and somewhere else to say, again, it was very much either nothing or very quick, quiet news cycle. I think the France one said they had a debunker on who was talking about GPAN, the French organization. They had, and they were quoting Mick West. So to say it's gone mainstream, maybe in the States, but rest of the world is still. So again, that baseline isn't there.
Look at Diary of a CEO, right? Like they just had Hal Puthoff on, and Diary of a CEO has 16.7 million subscribers. Rogan's got 20 million subscribers. Of Rogan's last 8 guests, the number one with a bullet is Tim Burchett, who has got like 2.5 times what the next biggest guest has in terms of just view count. And that's like Tim Burchett, a congressman. Like what?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much more mainstream it has to get for people. You've had every major talk show host has talked about it. Bill Maher, I don't even like Bill Maher, but Bill Maher had a serious conversation about it on his live panel. Not just one, but number of times. If you were watching a movie about if we were all characters in a movie and someone else was watching it, and in the movie the humans are about to find out that the aliens are here. This is the part of the movie where there's a montage of people, talking heads on TV, all saying like, aliens are here. What do you think about the aliens? We're in that.
But Andy's point is that that's just in the States and not worldwide, which I think is a valid point. So we have some ways.
Half the podcasters are in the UK.
Go and survey 100 members of the UK public anywhere, London, Manchester, Newcastle, Glasgow, and ask them, who's Tim Burchett? They'll not have a fucking clue. Ask them who Anna Plina Luna, Eric Burleson are. They won't have a clue. If I would honestly say, hand on heart, if you ask them about what's happening with UFOs just now, the most generic question, what's happening with UFOs just now, you might get 50% say, oh yeah, there's some stuff being released. That's it. Interest level, after that, that's it. So yeah, I was on a pop culture podcast. Two of my friends run. They have me on because they know they've got my book. They know what I do. Their podcast, they largely grilled me for an hour on how this is still BS. It's still nonsense. It's still quacks. And then very much, yeah, but where's the proof? Where's the evidence? Is it all just bloody dots on screens again? And I have to say, yeah, kinda. So I've sent them some stuff, but they're not going to look at it. They're not going to look into it. They never do. For them, it was that guy Grush came forward. That Obama and Trump had a little argument, and the US is now releasing files because it's always the US, isn't it? And I think worldwide, that's where a lot of the interest ends. That's before you go to Asia, Africa, and these countries where what's their baseline? Are they in touch with this? So again, if you want to talk about a US-centric phenomenon, yeah, there's a hell of a lot more interest. But even Stephen Bartlett, Diva CEO, his next shows, and again, use the example because it's in the cycle right now, he's managed to get Dan Farah and Hal Puthoff because he has major pull. If this drops out the news cycle, Bartlett's not touching this again. In my opinion.
I think it's interesting. I mean, you and Xander and Vinny and there's like a list of UK-based podcasters who all say that one of the UK talks about this. There's like more of you guys than there are Americans that I know.
No, we are literally all of the UK podcasters are all the people that talk about it.
That's why.
Yeah, we've all got podcasts on it.
It depends on where you go, man. Culturally, it's different everywhere. You know, in South America, it's a little different. In Peru, they're very open about it. The Peruvian Air Force has an office in Lima that is their UAP office. You can go in there. It's like you can walk right in, and there's like people working there. There's a staff. That's all they do is think about UFOs, investigate UFOs. You know, you ask people there, do you believe in aliens? And they'll be like, I think that guy's an alien. You know, it's just part of their world. It's part of their
and it was 40 years ago. That's nothing to do with now.
So Andy, I want to ask you, Andy, if that's the case, why do you think that is in the UK, and what can we do about it to change that?
You would have to release something significant that was undeniable, probably footage at this point, and it would have to be panel of scientists or Trump, Hegseth, whatever, proper HD or 4K footage for people here to really start to question it. Because right now, there's still the huge stigmatization of it's always the US. And this is what's been leveled at me recently. I was on Radio 5 Live last week. I don't give a shit. I don't get offended, right? But I had the worst experience I've had on a platform talking about this since I started. And I'm really fortunate that I get asked to do a lot of UK media. I think especially with Nick Pope not being here anymore, they're looking for people to speak to, and people have to fill that space. So if I get asked to speak about this topic, I like to think I do it in a way that reflects the community and you guys and people listening and watching. I'll reflect it well without making us sound ridiculous. And I was on Radio 5 Live, Stephen Nolan. If you're listening, Stephen, you're a prick, right? I couldn't say that to you on your platform, but he won't be. He was really rude, really condescending, paused and then went, how much of your time do you spend on this? We're all cranks for believing in it. And this was on a big platform. Now, the guy's known for being a prick, right? But he was just like, this is nonsense. There's no real proof here. This is all files and clippings from the 40s and 50s and 60s of newspapers, and a lot of it is. But he's like, where's the actual proof and the evidence? And guys like that, there's where your baseline for me comes in as the next level. When guys like him are going, shit, I was wrong. There is something to look at here. Because right now, it's always the States. The States are Hollywood, movies. And sorry to say, folks, if you're in the States, which 60% of this audience is, a lot of folks outside of the US go, well, they're a bit fucking mental, aren't they? So,
They're right.
yeah,
They're right.
there is this whole
true.
Hollywood element of it's all just films and TV shows, and you get the old, it's trailer park trash and middle America, you know, crazies wearing tinfoil hats talking about this. We know that's not the case. That is still a massive part of the stigma here. Is it shifting and changing? A little bit. But we would need something big that when our news media pick this up and run with it as a news story and not just a laughy, sniggery, haha, really? Aliens, flying saucers? Then there's been a change. But until then, yeah, and maybe I'm obviously one of the guys that has to help with that. But
well, in the States, we have gotten past that point. I think that's what I think Dan and I would agree on, right? Like
starting in the 2000s. Once we got into the 2000s, things started to change a little bit, but definitely over the last since like 2010, 11, 12, it's gotten a little bit more.
Can I just come one thing on that though, as to why I still think that's not completely correct, or not to the level that I would say is a change though, is and I checked. I like to say I'm very apolitical and I don't care left, right, whatever, right? I checked like CNN, Fox News, Daily Wire, Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, some random journalists that I think people would say were like lefties on Facebook, Instagram, X. When the stuff dropped, the amount of comments that were, this is just a distraction from Epstein. People weren't, there was a mix, but I would say at least 50% of comments were, this is just a distraction from Epstein. So that wasn't a great, advertisement for disclosure or people being there. People just went, oh yeah, bullshit. What next?
It's also not wrong. It is a distraction, but it's also true. You know, it is both.
So two things can be true, but
that's my problem. That's my problem here. Is like you're that's who you're dealing with, right? Like you have to understand the context of this whole thing is like in the shadow of the Epstein debacle, where we did find out, like, what else did you need about Epstein to see what else did people need to see? We saw pictures of President Clinton, pictures of President Trump, pictures of all these famous people, Woody Allen, you name it, they're all there.
Emails. It wasn't political, it was totally.
You could pick your red or blue, whatever side you're on. It doesn't matter. The other side was.
It was wealth.
There
it wasn't politics. It was wealth. Yeah.
It was. There you go. Now you're really talking. You're talking about the real question there. So it's this. All this information is available, and what was the end result? Well, here we are. No one's in jail. Not really. It just seems like the people who refuse to be convinced are going to be that way forever. And I'm not in the business of trying to convince them. And I don't think you or anybody else should really be either. Whether or not they come around, who cares? I bet you a lot of the people who would sit there and call bullshit on UFOs know every single name of every player on their favorite football team. They know all the fucking stats. They know, this to me is like that. I follow this world because it's fascinating, and it is like a science fiction universe of which some percentage is real. Yeah. And we just don't know which percent. So to me, I'm just sitting here eating popcorn, watching the whole thing, waiting for it to unfold.
Rubik's Cube. It's a Rubik's Cube that needs solved.
A big Rubik's Cube.
Guys, listen, that's gone 2 hours, and I very much appreciate both of your time. Do you want to let the audience know where they can watch and listen to you? Dan, you can go first. You've been on before. People hate you already, so go for it.
One guy hates me. Sorry, Fred. I'm back again. Love you, Fred. I have my own show, Others from Another Mother, on YouTube and anywhere you get podcasts. I do that not every week, just when I'm inspired to do it, but I'm working on some cool stuff. And then I do Doomer Friday with Clint every Friday, and that's my favorite day of the week. And I think we're doing something pretty cool over there. So please tune into both.
And Clint, same yourself, mate.
Yeah, for me, Night Shift is the YouTube channel. TeamNightShift.com is the website. If you want, it's all kind of linked through that website. And we do Doomer Fridays on Fridays with Dan and Xander and Pavel and yourself. And occasionally we have some interesting people drop by. And it's kind of our lighthearted way of winding down at the end of the week by processing all the bad news with a beer and a good conversation.
Oh, and tune in Friday for an announcement from Clint, I believe.
Oh yeah, got some big news on Friday.
Yeah, big news on Friday.
Yeah.
Nice. Look forward to that. Who's on the Doomer Friday this Friday?
Well, I have. I want to say. Can I say? Let me check my text here. This Friday, Thomas Jane's going to be dropping in for an hour in the second half, and I'm not sure who we have for the first half yet.
Punisher.
Maybe you.
Punisher.
Yeah, Punisher.
Is it, so I get an hour and then bumped off for fucking Thomas Jane.
Unless you want to hang out. You want to hang out with Thomas Jane? I texted him. I said, you want to come on Friday? He said, yeah, what time? Yeah, what time? So we'll find out. But yeah, that's
you can let me know. I'm free. But yeah, I got bumped for James Indoli last week, so that's okay.
No, we're bumping Xander for you this Friday.
I'm gone too,
no,
so there's space.
Xander's going to contact. I know why Xander's not there. Don't give me that.
We're bumping Dan.
Yeah, Xander and I are both not
fine.
there this week.
It'll be
if the guys will have me, I'll be there, folks. Otherwise, definitely tune in. It is a good show. It's a good mix of humor, but also if you like this and what I do, you'll appreciate the guys. And I think a lot of folks said that. And it's informed, it's speculative, and yeah, they all do individually really good things as well. So thank you, gents, for what you do. And yeah, good to have you on, and hope to have you back on again soon.
You too, Andy.
Thanks, Andy.
Cheers, guys. And that's us, folks. All those links, make sure you check them out in the show links below, and I'll catch up with you very, very soon.